Okay, we're continuing from the Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're doing Michael Sugrue, the great philosophy professor, the greatest philosophy professor I've ever seen. He was at Princeton and then Ave Maria University. And this is part two. We're talking about some of his quotes, in this case, about the rise of Christianity and its role in philosophy and modern values. So first of all, he says Thomas Aquinas was a synthesizer, a harmonizer, but he was not that creative or original. Thomas Aquinas, his philosophy of Thomism, for Thomas, it combines Greco-Roman philosophy with Christianity. Yeah, it was syncretic. Syncretic means to add things together. And that's what Aquinas did. That's what Catholicism did. Catholicism coexisted with paganism from, let's say, the death of Christ around 30 AD to 530 AD. It has a lot in common with paganism. And as Will Durant, the great historian, said, Catholicism didn't get rid of paganism or replace paganism as much as it in some ways adopted it. It took what was best in it and learned from it. Like it takes what's best, it took what was best of the Celts, okay? Whatever it encounters, it takes the best. That's why Catholicism is the best religion, because it can keep on improving. It doesn't change. Christ is Christ, but all of its philosophical, historical stuff, it keeps learning. Okay, so he says Thomas Aquinas baptized Aristotle and made him Christian. He basically made Aristotle acceptable to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church ran the universities of Europe, so it made him acceptable to the university system. And once it did, the Renaissance took off. Aristotle's great, okay? Aristotle leads to individualism and thinking and system building, okay? Plato's more of a mystic, okay? I don't even know why people like Plato so much, and a lot of people love him. The way you can think of Plato, Platonic Christianity, is filtered through Augustine, then it goes through Martin Luther, and it goes into Protestantism. Whereas Aristotelian Christianity is more filtered through Aquinas, and then it goes into Catholicism. And it's a million times better than Protestantism. Okay. So he also talks, before this sort of Aristotelian recovery, Christianity was more heavily influenced by Plato. And that includes through the Medicis, Marsilio Ficino, Pico della Mirandola. They were sort of enamored of Plato. And even Erasmus was heavily influenced by Plato. Plato was more collectivist, okay? Plato's, more of a mystic. All right, Aristotle's more logical. Aristotle made Christianity more intellectual. Scholastic writing, the scholastics were like Thomas Aquinas and Albert the Great. Aquinas and the scholastics were a mini Renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning. They would post a question and then everybody would debate it. You'd go through the known writings on it, and then you would go through Aquinas' writings on it. Then the student would add their own thoughts, okay? Here's a couple other quotes about the dualism, the duality, if you will, of Christianity. George Santayana. The Roman Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism. Yeah, and one of the things that's so funny, we don't go by the Greek gods. They're certainly a lot of fun. And I can tell you this, you look at the Renaissance, they would love the Greek gods for parties, Dionysian and all this stuff, and for their paintings and having fun. Okay, and then on Sunday they go to church and pray to the Christian God. But they had a lot of fun, and if you're a writer, there's nothing better than Greek mythology. It's fantastic for writing and for metaphor. It's magnificent. I'm studying sleep right now. There's Aurora, the goddess of the dawn. There's Nyx, the goddess of the night. There's Selene, the goddess of the moon. There's Helios, the driver of the sun chariot. There's Apollo, the former driver of the sun chariot, now the god of reason. There is, there's Dionysius, sort of the god of party, and Bacchanalia. And it's just great for literature. Okay, it's fantastic. What more could you want than personification of all these abstract concepts? All right. We're going to continue a little bit more with just what George Santayana had to say about it. He said, Christianity arose out of Greek theology and Old Testament morality. Greek theology predominated in Catholicism. Yep. Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism, whereas Old Testament morality predominated in Protestantism. Yeah, and it's kind of crazy, Old Testament morality. It's a little bit of do as I say or I'll kick your butt. It's sort of like you can say the Trinity. You got Old Testament God, which is a lot of do as I say or I'll kick your butt. Then you got Jesus, forgives everybody, says let's all be nice to each other. He's the nicest God. He's my favorite one. Then you've got the Holy Ghost, which is sort of like the philosophical God. Okay? I like the teaching of Christ. Be nice, get along, love each other. That what you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Forgive each other, try to help each other. That works. That creates a happy society. And then the idea of Aquinas, we honor God by studying his creation. That creates good science. And then we honor God by making beautiful creations ourselves. That creates magnificent art, literature, and music. Okay, George Santayana. Catholics had a Renaissance. The Protestants had a Reformation. Okay, here's a quote by Nietzsche. Now, Sugrue was an expert on Nietzsche too, but Nietzsche's an asshole. Okay, Nietzsche was, he lived in the 1800s in Germany. And he was a scholar of the ancient Greeks. And he came to the conclusion that he hated Socrates because he felt Socrates turned the Greeks into a bunch of wussies. Before they were strong and tough like the Iliad and the Odyssey, Achilles and Odysseus. And then he even liked, the playwrights Aeschylus and Sophocles that had sort of a martial spirit, if you will. And then he thought Euripides was a bit of a pussy, and same thing with Socrates. Question. And he thought they turned the Greek people against their traditional gods and made them a bunch of wimps, is how he saw it, Nietzsche. Okay. Nietzsche said that most people are hopelessly stupid. He said, I write to be misunderstood. Nietzsche was a jerk. I mean, his heroes were like Napoleon and Bismarck, just, war, conquest, brutality, atheism, that he felt most people didn't deserve any rights or anything. I mean, he was a total jerk, okay? He was a homosexual. He died of HIV. He died of syphilis, He's going to brothels. The more you look at Nietzsche, the less you like him. He's got clever quotes, so he seems kind of funny here and there, but he really has nothing that helps you. He'll say a few things you could have learned from anybody, okay? Learn to think as independently. Don't just go with the flow. Okay, fine. You don't need to be a genius to say that. Okay, and then here's what Sugrue has to say. He says, I like the Roman Catholic Church tradition because it appreciates both faith and reason, not just faith like Protestantism. Faith alone leads to craziness like Calvinism, Puritanism, all this stuff. Whereas, faith and works, faith and reason, they go together. Then you get the scientific method coming out of the Catholic Church. Michael Sugrue, another quote of his that I like. It is not clear to me that love is a lesser value than truth. I like them both. Sugrue is the best. I'm telling you, I studied tons and tons and tons of philosophy and history. Sugrue's great because he's not only knows the history, but he also has this like kind-hearted perspective that helps you to see the key point in things. So that's it for part 2 of quotes on Sugrue. I hope you enjoyed that.